Good morning, dear friends. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today on this wonderful Monday, the 28th of March. As shocking as that sounds, 24th of Adar Sheni. We already blessed the month of Nisan, and this Shabbos will be Rosh Chodesh, and we're on the march to Pesach. I'm not sure if that's considered a high crime to mention that. I don't want to trigger anyone. Pesach is coming. I'm triggering myself. And we're studying the entire Talmud, one page, one line, two letters at a time. Perek Arba Asar. 14. Shemona Shrotzim. 110. 110b, I believe, is where we are. No, 110a is where we are at. When we left off, we've been talking broadly about remedies, health, supplements in the ancient world, and we spoke a lot about snakes and worms. Snakes and worms are things that you could put up with if they are outside, but not if they're in you or in your region or in your water. And so what does a person do if they drink toxic mayim megulim, water that may have shared your cup with a venomous snake and you've consumed the venom? And so we have all the different and somewhat or less familiar items, because indeed we're not accustomed to many of these remedies. We talked about the possibility for a certain snake bite, something about a white donkey split in half, and a story of a gentleman in Pumpadisa who couldn't find a viable, fitting donkey, and it was a result of his disrespecting the mournful practices around the passing of Rav. And we found Hashkacha Pratis that we just marked the conclusion of the Shiva for the great Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky, of blessed memory. And now we're going to continue talking about snakes. So let's share the screen and get started. Well, that's not going to help you, but this might. There we go. And yes, it's going to get even more interesting before we're done. So I'm just giving you a heads up. Talking about snakes. Again, what's evident from our Gemara is that snakes were a prevailing, frequent, and reasonable thing to consider. How frequent, I don't know, but frequent enough that there's a lot of discussion here. And some of the concerns that we're going to talk about will seem more than a little outlandish. And again, I'll remind you that all of our sages remind us that you shouldn't try these remedies at home. You should speak to a competent expert in the medical field. But to study these remedies is certainly part of the Torah conversation and very interesting. And with that, let's dive right into our snake pit. Haiman Bekarche Chivya, a person who, God forbid, is being... Now, I don't know if they're being encircled, which sounds like it's just chasing them, or if it's actually wrapped around you. My instinctive translation would have been that he's actually like, the snake is actually wrapped around them. So we'll stick with that. Rashi nichrach sivoisav, it's wrapped around. What do? You got a snake on you. You do not want that snake to continue making you problems. Even if the snake is not venomous, it can still, the non-venomous snakes like to constrict and suffocate their prey. So what do? So linchais lamaya, jump in the water. The lischayf dikula areshe, put a basket on the head of the snake. Ulahad kemine, and then slowly peel it off of you. Now, in the Everglades, if you're dealing with a snake, I'm not certain that jumping into the water is going to help. I think the snakes are probably more at home than you in the water. But we're talking about a different kind of snake. Rashi, areshe the chivya l'mayla me'areshe, place it over its head. Ulahad kemine yorid hasal me'at ma'at, slowly lower the basket with tzad hanachash, the yabdul hanachash mefsora, and use the basket to set the snake apart from you. Sheyala ala sal, and apparently the snake will be inclined to go into the basket. And the problem is, you don't want to be using your bare hands against the snake, because if the snake gets upset at you, it'll bite you. But if you have this solid basket in between you, even if the snake gets nervous, it's going to lash out at the basket and not at you. So that sounds like a fair thing to consider. you may wish to use a tool in the removal of a snake. And when the snake does eventually leave you and go off of you, throw the basket, the snake into the water and get out of the water pronto.
Rabbi,
yes.
I guess the first thing to do if you see a snake is pull out Masechet Shabbos.
Well, that's why you have to be very, very well versed in the Talmud. Yeah. Rashi. So you should get rid of that snake as soon as possible. Throw it in the water, and then you get out of the water. Now, this is all with the assumption that your snake is still exploring. We don't know what he wants to do with you. But things could even be worse than engaging a snake. What happens if the snake is infatuated? Well, no, that's not the word Rashi uses. Koyes. The snake is angry, mad, and is pursuing. And the snake has seized onto the scent, your scent, and is pursuing you. That's a problem, obviously. You don't want a snake pursuing you. If you have a friend nearby, you can shake the snake's trail by Lirkeve Arba Garmide. He should ride you, or you should ride him piggyback style. Arba Garmide, a distance of 4.
We have background noise, Rabbi.
All right, let's see if that helps. Of course, a reminder to please unmute for questions and comments, but be mindful if there's background noise. So you should ride on his shoulders for Amos. What does that accomplish? This might sound silly, but actually this makes sense. The snake is following your scent and your trail. Well, maybe shake things up, confuse the snake, merge your profile with another person, and maybe that will shake the snake. Now, this reminds me again of the joke we said about the bear and the guy outrunning his friend and not outrunning the bear. That's got to be a good friend if he's willing to take you on his shoulders and risk incurring the wrath of the snake. The Eloi, if he doesn't have a friend who's willing to carry him around, or maybe it doesn't help, Lishvar Nigra, jump over a ditch. Rashi Charetz Shamai Midloig. The Eloi Laver Nara, cross a river. I suppose again, all of these things would be to erase or lose the trail, the scent of the person who is being pursued. Right? Does that make sense? Ubalila, what do you do at night? Loisve Lipuria. You might want to mount your bed on 4 barrels. Yeah, Loisve Lipuria Abra Chavisa. Lift up your bed. Vinigne Bekoi Chive. And sleep under the stars.
Rabbi.
Yes.
Isn't it strange that they don't say anything about try to kill the snake?
I'm not sure. That's an interesting thing to consider. Let's see the conclusion of the Gemara, and then we can discuss what alternatives are not mentioned and try to theorize why not. That's interesting.
This is Shabbos.
No. I don't believe this is on Shabbos. This is any time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And anyways, one would be permitted to do anything they could to be free of a poisonous snake. Yeah, we've taken a little bit of a detour to talk more broadly about remedies and what to do when in trouble. So it started off by saying, what do you do if you drink venomous water? And then it segued to what do you do if you're bitten by a snake? And now we're talking about what to do if a snake is pursuing you. So you try to shake the scent of you try to shake the trail. The snake shouldn't be able to follow you. Put your bed on mounts which keep you higher from the ground so the snake can't get to you fast enough, or it can't catch your scent. Sleep outside, which somehow will allow you to see if the snake is approaching or something to that effect. Bring 4 cats, tie them to your bed. Vilaisi shachafe, bring twigs, and put them on the floor. And when the cats hear the snake, the cats will eat the snake. So basically what you want to do is have cats on guard and make it easy for them to identify the approaching snake, and then the cats will eat the snake up. And lastly, Haiman de Rohit Abasre. If a person is being chased by a snake, Lirhoit Be Chalasa, you might want to go to a sandy, run in the sand. Rashi. Snakes have a hard time navigating sandy terrain. Is this all snakes? I don't know. I imagine we're talking about a specific creature that was indigenous to the regions where the Talmud was being composed. And at that time, these were best practices for trying to avoid a snake. Rebel asks a good question. Why don't you just kill the snake? I imagine there was a greater risk engaging the snake and trying to kill it, which therefore the advice was, if you can't kill it, it's pursuing you, and then you might want to do other tricks for the snake to lose your trail. I imagine that is what we're saying.
Rabbi, if Dr. Hammer was here, he would ask you about Tsar Balachayim for the cats.
Dr. Hammer's here, and actually he'd probably tell you that
sorry.
the reason why the Gemara doesn't propose killing is maybe because of Tsar Balachayim. But that was
Rabbi,
yes.
The best way to avoid snakes is to have a mongoose with you. A mongoose is a little animal that's about the size of a cat, and snakes are petrified of it. The mongoose will kill the snake every time.
Why? What is a mongoose able to do that we can't do?
The mongoose, first of all, is not susceptible to the venom of the of getting ill from the venom.
That's a
and
problem.
It's very fast. It knows every move. As soon as the snake sees the mongoose, you see the snake curl up and back off.
Very interesting.
Yeah, we have it in the stories of Rudyard Kipling.
What is that?
Rudyard Kipling, in his stories, wrote about the mongoose and the snakes.
Yeah, I was in Thailand, and we went to one part of our tour was a snake farm, and they showed us the mongoose and the snake.
Interesting. Also, you're saying this is real. It's not just a.
Yeah. No. It's real.
No, it's real.
It's real.
Now,
It's
where do
not
mongoose live?
Far East.
In Asia.
Not in
Asia.
Florida. Okay. All right. Now we're going to get to another interesting possibility that people were concerned about a snake. Now we have a woman that is being targeted by a snake or not. And he's not sure if the snake is actually interested in pursuing her to harm her or whatever. So there's an interesting proposal. Tishlach mana v'tishte kameh. Throw a garment, take off a garment, and throw it at the snake. Now, what does that help? If the snake chomps at and wraps around the clothing, well, then you know that the snake is actually interested in this individual. Again, the Gemara seems to be indicating that the snakes primarily function with scent. I don't know if our snakes do that or not. But if the snake totally ignores the garment thrown its way, it means that the snake is actually not incredibly interested in it. Rashi says something interesting. I don't know what to make of it. I'm going to ask everyone to assist, or we can discuss this, but maturely. Rashi says that Yav Dat Alavei. What does it mean that the snake is interested in the woman? Not to bite her, but Rashi says Litavas Tashmish. There's an attraction to the woman. I don't know if our present day snakes have this issue, but I could understand that, there's a great degree of Agadic teaching describing a complicated relationship between the first woman and the snake. And they say that the snake desired Chava and maybe was intimate with Chava, depending on which Midrashic text you read. And also, generally, we say that the snake was not a snake. The snake had different biological presentation than today. I thought maybe that a snake was a dinosaur or something, because a snake is described as having legs and arms and intelligence of a human. So I'm not telling you what to make of this. I'm just giving you
Rabbi.
a barrel.
So if the snake is interested, the last thing she wants to do is take off garments.
Well, maybe snakes' attraction works differently than other creatures. Because we said the snake is primarily motivated by scent. So again, I don't know. I don't know what to make of this Gemara beyond what it says. So that's what we're gonna stick with.
Don't try this at home.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking if the snake's pursuing you and you throw a garment over its face, it'll get tangled up. Maybe you'll buy yourself some time, but that's not what the Gemara here is suggesting. All right, it gets better. Or my takante. So what do you do to help the snake move on? The snake is infatuated with a person. The person would rather the snake not be infatuated with him. So the Gemara now has a very interesting proposal, and there's a debate about this. Ma takante, what do you do? Tishamesh kame. Be intimate in front of the snake. Let the snake understand that you're not available. Rashi, ma takante yavalei tashmash kame imbala v'tiskana b'fonim. So, assuming she's married, she should have relations in front of the snake, and hopefully the snake will lose interest. Ikada Amri, but there's another perspective in the Gemara, which says, Kol Shekain, the talk of Yitzir. That's going to be teasing the snake, and that's not going to help matters. Elotishko, Mimaziaya, Umetrufa Vitishtebe. Rather, what you should do is take some hair and nails, throw it at the snake. The Tema Dishtana Ana, and declare Dishtana Ana. I'm currently menstruating and not available to you. Now, I want to just add one comment before we understand that much of the Agadic Gemaras may not necessarily be entirely literal. There may be other esoteric themes that are being conveyed. I'm not here to tell you what they are, but just understand that it's possible that this is not entirely literal. Because once we start talking about a snake, we understand that there are a lot of deep ideas in Jewish thought about the snake and temptation and all these things. So I'm just leaving the door open that there may be a not literal take that is the primary intent of this Gemara. Dr. Hammer?
Is there a reason or an understanding as to why we're focusing on females and not just people? Men can also throw things. Men can also become naked,
Because,
et cetera.
Well, that's probably why Rashi assumes there is an attraction. And I'll tell you what, the Gemara will make another biological claim that will make things make a little more sense or less sense, but you'll understand why we're talking more about a woman than a man.
Well, I'll tell you, Barney, when
Yeah.
it comes to men, if the remedy for the snake is for the woman to have relations with the man, I would see the man bringing a couple of snakes home.
You're saying men will bring
Or maybe,
move in some
vice
snakes.
versa. Some women would bring the snake to give an excuse for the husband to pay attention to her.
I hear you. So Dr. Stammer, Beryl gave a good.
We can
Good
start a
shot.
new company. This is the beginning of a new company.
Now, Beryl, now I want to ask you a question. Would it have been helpful if your friend would have been on for this as his first foray into our chabura?
What's the expression? You got a lot of splaining to do.
I could think of an appropriate name for this new startup company that we're going to start up. It's going to be called Startup.
All righty, let's see. So the Gemara says that you should communicate to the snake that you're unavailable. All the commentaries say this is not actually because the snake understands your English or your Hebrew or your Aramaic. Lachash hu ba'alma. This is a esoteric incantation. You're not actually sharing something with a snake, but this was understood to help. And in general, the idea of incantations is not only that it makes sense per se, but that there was some kind of esoteric effect.
Rabbi, we have connections with the snake, with the staff, turning the snake into staff.
Yeah.
There's
So
something
snake is
going
a
on
very
there, some connection somewhere.
the snake is has a central role in biblical metaphor. And that's why I am particularly asking to leave the door open for the possibility that there is some kind of metaphor. Now, unfortunately, it would be better, it would be easier for me to make this case if I actually could tell you what that metaphor was, but it is what it is. So here, the Chida, this is not going to give that answer. The Chida asks, what does the Gemara say, to have relations in front of the snake or not? So the Chida says that this is actually saying as follows. The first opinion believes that the first time that the snake became interested in humans with Chava is after noticing Adam and Chava being intimate. And that's when he became interested and starts getting involved in messing and trying to mix into Chava's life. And so when the snake notices two humans being intimate, it'll bring back traumatic flashbacks to when his life was forever changed as a result of last time he noticed human beings being intimate. The second opinion says that the snake already has a weak Yetzer Hara for this, and therefore you're yet going to trip the snake up. I know Reb Beryl is going to say a third interpretation, which is that the snake might have not listened in Hebrew school and doesn't even know about the mistake of his ancestor. So you have three different ways to look at it. All right, the Gemara continues, and it gets better. An individual who the snake, I'm just going to say it, penetrated them, slithered into them. That's a problem, obviously. What do you do?
Sure is.
The ayol b'chivya. Now again, I don't know if I've never heard in the modern day of such an event. I haven't ever really Googled or searched for it for that matter, but I don't believe this is a common event. Maybe Babylonian snakes were different. And here Rashi gives an explanation, which at the very least you'll understand why, according to Rashi, we're talking primarily about female human beings. A snake could desire and slither into their body. So what do you do? They should should put both legs on a barrel, and put some grilled, charred, fatty meat, and bring some cress, and fragrant wine, and place them there, mix it all together. She should hold a tongs or a how do you call it? Not a pliers, I don't know, some kind of tool. The snake's gonna smell this delicious meal. Nafik vasi is gonna come out, and then at that point, she should schlep out the snake and throw it into the fire. Rashi. Burn the snake. The ilah, if she doesn't kill the snake, hadar ilava, the snake may try to attack her in this manner again. And so this is a remedy for the Iraqi snakes that were known to attack people in this manner. And
Rabbi,
the Iraqi snakes had good taste. They liked rare meat. They liked wine. And that's it. Rabbi, go ahead.
Explain to me again how we got in the Masechet Shabbos to this.
Very simply. We were talking about remedies that are permissible on Shabbos in the Mishnah. One of those remedies is a remedy for venomous water. And so we gave the remedy for that. And then we gave the remedy. Then we gave the remedy for being bitten by a snake. Then we gave the remedy for being pursued by the snake, a man being pursued by a snake, and then we gave a particular concern that was more unique to females. And we are also talking about a very specific kind of snake that has a good taste for wine and rare meat. And once again, open to the possibility that this is a metaphor more than a literal interpretation. I could imagine we could probably, I think we're going to avoid being more creative than the Talmud itself provides, but we could imagine a metaphor of temptation and distraction and going in dangerous directions. And I think we could probably come up with a metaphor that would help us make this a little more abstract and less literal. But I can only give with you what I see from the commentaries that I have accessible at this moment. And maybe, and I'm afraid to Google it because I can imagine the Google results will probably cause our shir to not be able to be broadcast on YouTube. But I imagine that we would find some discussions, and I imagine it's probably not a real thing that happens in 2022. But if anybody has any background, Alan, maybe when you're traveling to the Far East, did you ever hear of such an issue?
Never.
Okay.
Rabbi, what's interesting is that there's no mention of snake charmers, because in general, along with this is one of the mysterious talents that people have.
I'll tell you, in Israel, in the army, when we were in the field and taking off our shoes, we were always told, make sure when you put your shoe back on, make sure there's those high shoes. Turn around, check it out, making sure no scorpions and no snakes in there.
They had a kid die near Beersheba from a bite of a scorpion just a month ago, I think I read.
Yeah, there are
snakes are real. I think we have to acknowledge that snakes are real, and Florida has snakes. And I think the more west you go, you're probably even have a higher concentration of snakes the closer you go to what was once the Everglades.
Florida has a bigger problem, that there are snakes that were introduced that are not native to Florida.
Those are not poisonous. They're bad for the ecosystem. That's why every year they have these like competitions to hunt. Which snake is it? Is it the boas?
Some kind of constrictors.
Yeah.
There's only one kind.
I apologize for slithering away.
Oh,
bro, I thought you would cancel all your other plans for this one.
Okay,
all right.
Be well, everybody. By the way, for the professor, to go off topic, even though you're recording, I noticed that the highest ranked general in the Russian army, who was supposedly killed, first name Yakov. So we have the situation of Jews in the Russian army, who knows, for whatever reason.
There are plenty of Jews in the Russian army. If you Google, a few years ago, they dedicated a shul for the Russian army. There are many Jews in Russia, and there are Jews in the army. And it brings back, the stories that we were told about in World War I, where you had German Jews and Russian Jews facing off against each other and saying Shema Yisrael and all different kinds of.
I imagine with a name like Yaakov, he would have to be Jewish.
He's probably Jewish. It's very sad.
Very sad. Okay.
All right, Beryl, before you go, I don't want you to think we're going to spend the next half an hour on this subject. So we're actually going to pivot now to another topic. So you should leave knowing that we're not actually going to spend the next half an hour on the same matter.
Well, yeah, you have one Bernie left, not to worry.
that's it. Don't worry.
Back to the Mishnah. All the food that a person can eat can also be consumed for medical purposes. Right? All types of food that healthy people eat may be eaten by one eating them for their medical purpose. Whenever there's a word kol, there's something that you might have otherwise assumed isn't included in this halacha. So what does it mean? It includes the consumption of spleen for your teeth, v'karshinim livnei me'ayim, and to consume vetch, says Rabbi Steinsaltz, which is good for GI concerns. Rashi, here, vetch. Vetch plants from the bean family. The fava bean is an important food crop. I'm looking for what the bean looks like. Maybe this is it. Looks like you could eat it. All right. So we're teaching that a person is allowed to eat on Shabbos something that is occasionally eaten. Even though Rashi says, Shekash levnei me'ayim. Rashi, afal pi shekash l'shinayim, kidemim brachis, although they're bad for your teeth. Sakadaita chamina kivan shekashim la'adam lav orchil lemechlino ilav l'refuah sheish by muchamilsa. Oh, so the Gemara says, although these are foods that have a downside to them, and so I might think that they are really exclusively eaten for their medical remedy purposes, but being that they are occasionally eaten innocently, therefore you're allowed to eat it even for its benefit. Okay. So two foods that you would assume otherwise you wouldn't be allowed to eat, and we learn that you're allowed to eat them. Kol hamashkin lasuyimai. Why does the Mishnah use the same phrase? Kol hamashkin. All liquids that you're allowed to drink. Lasuyimai. What does this include? Mei tzulafin b'chaymitz. This includes mei tzulafin. We're talking about caper juice. Okay, Rabbi Steinsaltz has a better translation. Water in which capers have been soaked with vinegar. I mean, it sounds like caper juice, but a little more sophisticated than that. So those are allowed to be consumed, notwithstanding the detrimental effects that they may have, and you won't assume that it's only for healing. Now the Gemara asks an important question. Mahu Amar le Ravina Ravina asked Rava Mahu lishtais mei raglayim b'Shabbos. Is one permitted to drink urine on Shabbos? Now, as you may recall, urine has or had certain limited medical advantages and benefits. Amar le Tanena kol mashkin shoisa. Which should be inclusive of even urine. The Gemara ends, however, but ultimately, I'm sorry, kol mashkin shoisa, any beverage you can drink. Mei raglaim, urine is not classified as a beverage. It is exclusively something used when and for its medicinal and remedy value. If that's the case, one may not drink urine on Shabbos. So for anyone that was hoping to do so, I'm sorry to ruin your morning. You cannot consume that on Shabbos. All right.
How times have changed.
Yeah, times changed. Once upon a time.
Wow.
I mean, if you go to the wrong mixologist, is that what we call the bar? You never know what you might get in your drink. Let's see the code of Jewish law real briefly. Any food or drink, which is consumed by normal people, healthy people. You may eat it. You can take it for healing. This is argument. Even if there is a detrimental side effect, and therefore, of it, if a person's taking it, most likely they're only taking it for healing. Nonetheless, it's permitted because ultimately this is a food that even a regular person. But if it's not at all something that a healthy person might eat, obviously we're only talking about a person that has a discomfort. But if there's something that is a real problem, I'm sorry, take that back. Anything that's not a food or drink, you're not allowed to take. And then the Shulchan Aruch says, but obviously this is only if you have a problem. But if you don't have any problem, well, then you can eat it, although maybe you shouldn't, but you don't have an issue of Shabbos. Our Mishnah continues and says you can drink every single drink, except May the Kolim. Give me 1 second, please. So the Mishnah says you're allowed to drink any beverage. No, give me 1 second. Folks, I beg your pardon. So all beverages may be consumed, says the Gemara, with the exception of May Dikolim, water of palm trees. Now, an interesting comment here. Tana, a Tosefta teaches this similar teaching, but a small single letter that is changed. Chutz mimei dikarim. You can drink any drink besides for mei dikarim. Dr. Stamler, lidikor means
Stab.
to stab. So mei dikarim, besides for the stabbing drink. Why would you call it mei dikarim? Man detana mei dikarim. The Tosefta who calls it mei dikarim. Shehem dokrim et hamara, because they puncture the mara, the gall bladder. Is that good news or bad news? We'll see in a moment.
Bad news.
I'm sorry.
That's bad news.
Well, you don't want your gallbladder to be literally punctured, but what happens if there's an excess buildup of bile? Maybe the ducts are I don't know enough about medicine to even try to make a theory why it would be good for you.
If it's blocked.
Does a gallbladder get blocked and that's a problem?
What?
Oh, okay. So then my theory might stand. So if it helps drain the gallbladder of excess bile or whatever, maybe that's a remedy. Maybe that's a positive. Uman damar made the kolim, and the one who calls the same drink made the kolim, sheyotzem min shnei dikli, because this beverage comes from two palm branches. What? Not one. My made the kolim. So the Gemara asks, first, let's establish what exactly is made the kolim. Amar Rabba Barbarena, tarte telai ika b'ma'arava. There are two telais. Rashi, the kolim nitiyais min tamarim shenikra b'lashon arami tali. There's a specific type of date palm, which is called tali. And so those two specific palm trees produce this drink. Hi, Mendel. Vinafka eina demaya mibenayo, and there could be a spring of water in between these two trees. Kasakama marpi, the first cup of water that of a spring that flows between these two trees has a laxative effect. The idach mishalshal, the next one leads to the runs. The idach ki heche da'ili hachi nafki, And the third one so thoroughly drains your digestive tract that it emerges as clear as it came in. So we should tell the GI doctors who administer how do you call it? Colonoscopy, endoscopies, they should just use this water and it works wonders. Rashi, Tloi, the Kolim Nitiyes, Min Tamarim Shanik Rami, Kasakama, the Shasam Hanumaya. Anyways, they're extremely effective, says the Gemara. Amar Ula says, Lididi Shasili Shichra de Bavloi. I drank once Babylonian beer. Umale Minayu, and it even had a greater laxative and loosening effect than these waters. But it only has that effect if not consumed within 40 days. So if you don't drink beer for 40 days, your system is not used to it and it triggers an extensive flushing. And apparently, well, anyways, so wow, Beryl would regret missing this Gemara. So anyways, we're talking about these two drinks, which maybe can be consumed. And we have two versions, made the karim and made the kalim. We've explained made the kalim means that it comes from maybe runoff or it's somehow affected by the two palm trees and it helps the person's system flush. Ula says that there is a Babylonian beer that could have a similar effect. And now the Gemara continues. Rav Yosef says, Zeisoim Hamitzri Tilta Sa'ari, Tilta Kurtami, the Tilta Milcha. What does it mean? Rashi. Who made the karim? Why is it called a stabbing drink? Because it stabs and eliminates the illness. And he explains what the made the karim is. A third of Egyptian zaytom is a third barley, a third saffron, and a third salt. Alan, any of these ingredients, to your pharmaceutical knowledge, have health benefits, I should say?
Barley, I think, barley is quite good, but barley is basically animal food. But
right,
we
so
use it in soups.
Could you
Saffron is just a herb.
So you have the barley, saffron, and salt is as a drink, and it's supposed to have some kind of medical benefit. Rav Papa disagrees and says made the karim is tilsa chiti, it's made of wheat. Tilsa kortami, a third saffron. The tilta milcha v'chamoina, and the third is a mixture of salt and cumin. V'simanach si sa ne. And the way you'll know what ingredients to put into your made the karim is si sa ne. What does that mean? Let's see Rabbi Steinsaltz here. Two samachs. It tells us that Rav Yosef with a samach says zeisom is with sa'orim. So Rav Yosef, the samach, Yosef says sa'orim, and the other guy says wheat, Rashi. Klisha noisnim by tamarim. The sisani literally is a kind of dish that holds dates. But the word sisani is a good reminder to know that Rav Yosef says sari and the other guy says chi ti. The Gemara just adds v'shasuluhu bein davcha latzarta. This is typically consumed between Pesach and Shavuos. You're gonna love this. Why? Dikamit marpile v'dirfe komitli. If a person is suffering of constipation, it'll be a softener, and a person that has the runs will find balance restored to their consistency. Now,
Rabbi, if you give me a few minutes, I'll call the Samach Tzedek and ask him.
Now, here is the question. Why between Pesach and Shavuos do people have particular GI problems? I don't know, but I could imagine after eating matzah all Pesach long, there may be some GI your digestive tract may need some servicing. Sounds fair? Sounds right? By the way, apparently the beer that Ulla is describing was not just a drink; it actually was intended to serve as a remedy. Saffron.
By the way,
Yes.
if you Google Sinsanim in Hebrew, you'll find that the date tree, it comes down in bunches of dates. And those bunches are called Sinsanim.
Interesting. Because what did Rashi say? It was the dish that holds the dates. But we could fathom and that would go hand in hand. Very interesting. I think
There are pictures of it too.
I'm sorry to stop. There's people here waiting here for me. So we'll just stop a few minutes early. I want to recap today's Gemara. I'm not sure you're going to forget it, but we spent our first part talking about a person being pursued by a snake, what to do. We talked about a woman to figure out if the snake is into them or not, and if the snake is into them, how to escape it, and if the snake actually goes into the person, what to do. And then we transition to more mild topics like Mei Dekarim or Mei Dekalim, which is either a drink that shatters and pierces and allows the system to be cleansed, or a drink that comes from water that flows near these two palm trees. And we learned of a Talmud era laxative that by all reports seems to be highly effective. And what am I forgetting? And that's the crux of the discussion. Tomorrow we're going to discuss something called Kos Ikarim, which is referenced in the Mishnah. It is possibly a drink that triggers, causes a person to become sterile. And so we ain't done with our medical remedies just yet. I think tomorrow will probably be our final installment on this journey through Talmud era remedies. But I should add, I failed to say in the beginning that we dedicate, of course, our learning for the well-being, the health of our dear members of our Chabura and their households. Everyone should have the good news that we daven for. And of course, I want to mention Malka, Bas Rivka, and Rita Basleya, and everybody else that needs a refuah should be speedy, complete, and total. My dear friends, have a wonderful day. Again, thank you for indulging me as I jump away just a few minutes early. I look forward to seeing everybody tomorrow. In Briut v'Simcha.
Amen. Ishkach.
Thank you very much. Don't
Thank you.